I'm here with a group called the Incorruptibles, and it started kind of in the last fall when some friends and I were thinking, what is really wrong with government today? Like, what's the core, in one sentence, what could you say is really wrong with government? And we decided that the thing wrong with government is it's not filled with Bernie Sanders, right? I mean, if we had 100 Bernie Sanders in the Senate and 435 Bernie Sanders in the House and Bernie Sanders filling state and local government, like, we would have no problem, right? Okay. We're on the same page. So, you know, we can't clone him, but we can try to, our mission is to fill all levels of government with incorruptible politicians who represent the 99% and fight for economic, environmental, racial, and social justice. So that question starts with how do we make that happen? And how do we create thousands of Bernie Sanders? And the sort of first premise that we came to is that people like that can't really start at the national level. So it just takes too much money, and then they don't have enough experience in politics, they don't have a community base. So we really believe that, and Bernie himself tried, right? Even in the 80s he couldn't do it. So he tried running for senator, and then for governor, and then for, senator, I think again, and never got more than 5% of the vote. It wasn't until he ran for mayor that he won the election. So then the question is, how do you fill local government with, great progressive people who are going to continue to fight as they move up? And we have the great fortune in the Bay Area of living near Richmond, California. And how many people here have heard of the Richmond Progressive Alliance? Hey, awesome, good. Okay. Steve Early, that's right. He wrote the book on it. Yes. Yeah. So I'll give you the short story about Richmond. It was a very troubled city and an extremely corrupt city, basically owned by Chevron for 100 years. There's one of the largest oil refineries in the country is there. It's a Chevron refinery, and every 10 years or so there would be an explosion or a spill. It would send hundreds of people to the hospital. There would be environmental damage. They had the second highest homicide rate in the country. They had a horrible police brutality problem, and it's more than 50% of people who live there are African American or Latino. Just a city with a ton of problems, and the city government did nothing about it. And then in 2003, the Richmond Progressive Alliance decided they were not going to stand for it anymore, and they started doing this model that's really pretty different to organize the community and run slates of candidates. And they now have a supermajority in the city council. They had the mayor for 8 years. She turned out, or she would still be the mayor. And that's despite in 2014, there were, Chevron spent $3 million trying to defeat their candidates, and the every single RPA candidate won, right? So they've succeeded in becoming an incredible political force, but more importantly, the policy changes they've made are really remarkable. They have reduced the homicide rate by 75%. They now have one of the best community policing forces in the country. They've passed the first rent control bill in California in 30 years. And Chevron is now paying like tens of millions of dollars in like back taxes and damages and many other things as well. It's not just those, but those are So we really feel like their model is totally game-changing. And what we do is we train local groups to kind of follow their model. And their model, I like to talk about kind of three real differences between their model and the way people normally get involved in politics. One is that instead of candidates choosing themselves and then coming to you for an endorsement, the community chooses the candidates. And they run a slate of candidates. So they really kind of select who they think. They cultivate people, and they help train up people who may have been activists, who may have been teachers, who may have been leaders in their church or somewhere else to become great candidates. And then they run a slate of candidates for every available seat. And then instead of reaching out to those people most likely to vote, which is kind of a normal get out the vote thing, they reach out every year, year-round, to people who are least served by the government. And often those are the people least likely to vote. So they're really building the base, rather than just trying to get, it's not about swing voters, it's not about any of that stuff. It's about getting people who have not been engaged in politics engaged, because you're giving them real agency of either being a candidate or voting for, probably decide who the candidates are, and decide what the platform of that city is going to be. And then the third way is that instead of holding elected officials accountable in this very antagonistic relationship, they work with their progressive council members to make sure the policy can get passed. Because a lot of times policy isn't passed not just because there aren't the votes, but because the research wasn't done, or there wasn't enough of a coalition put together. There are a lot of ways that as residents, we can all kind of participate in policy as long as we're involved early enough to help those people who have been elected to get policy passed. When we talk to elected officials, sometimes we hear that the day of their election was actually, the day after their election was maybe the loneliest moment because all those people go home, and now they have to try and pass things, and they may be the only progressive person, or in Cambridge probably not, but they may need some help passing the policy. So those are kind of some of the differences in terms of the way that they organize local politics in order to win. For the Incorruptibles, our strategy in the long term is we kind of have a hub and spoke model. So we train people with workshops, and we offer support and strategy, and we can really be there for you if you have any questions about anything, or need to kind of think about things. And we also connect you with other cities around the country so that you can talk to each other and kind of work things out yourselves. But the difference is that as soon as you have enough cities in any one state, then that state will also have a committee that makes decisions about running a slate of candidates for every available seat in state politics. So that's the way that we envision moving forward at the local level, and the state level, and then again at the national level once we have enough chapters. So we have two guiding principles. Number one is no front money. So I think that's just something that at this point in time has become necessary. If anybody has any questions about that, probably don't, but if you do, please feel free to ask. And then the second one is that we are post-partisan. And we think that that's important. And post-partisan, right? So we're not affiliated with a party. And we think, what's important about that is that if, as you are coordinating and building coalitions in your city, if, for example, there's someone who is a Green Party, who has run in the Green Party, who would be an amazing person, they have, the right experience, right viewpoints, they're a wonderful leader, and they want to run under the Green Party or under some other party, they shouldn't be either forced out or forced to join one of the major parties. And the other reason we do that is because we want to be as capable of winning in red states and red cities as we are in blue ones. So if we ally ourselves with the Democrats, for example, then we won't be able to have success in some of those red places. It's part of why we chose our name, like the Richmond Progressive Alliance. And some people, on the West Coast are like, you should call yourselves the Progressive Alliance, or you should call yourselves the Progressives. And the truth is that to us, progressive means the good guys, right? I think to other factions in the country, it means either the naive people or it means the bad guys. And so we don't want to use trigger words.
Sometimes called commies.
So yes, that's right. There are many different viewpoints of that word, and it raises a lot of issues. But we're nonpartisan, so people should run as whatever party they want to that you think they can win in a local election. So what we offer right now is a series of workshops. And the first one is a strategy workshop. So it really looks at who are the residents of your city and who are the underrepresented communities in your city. And then we look at what are all of the groups, the organizations that you could build a coalition with. Because it's really about having a unified coalition of people per city. So we'll never have more than one, Incorruptibles chapter in any one city. It'll always be like a unified group of people. So this isn't just political groups. It could be unions. It could be churches. It could be, there are all sorts of like service organizations that serve the underserved communities. Those are all great people to ally with. So looking at all those groups, the third section is on the elected seats themselves. So what are the different elected bodies, city council, transportation, school board, and how many seats are there, when are the elections, and which of those people who are in those seats now do you feel like you would like to replace or improve on? And then there's a fourth section which is on the structure of elections. And so that's about, do you have public financing? Do you have ranked choice voting? Do you have paper ballots and an audit of at least 1%? So those sorts of things that just are your elections themselves set up to allow progressives to succeed. So that's the strategy workshop, and that's the one that we're currently running for some groups out in California. But we also have workshops on how to have those conversations with coalition partners to get them on your side. Workshops on how to run Bernie-style town halls. It's a little bit different from from regular town halls. Instead of bringing people to be like, oh, I'm going to have a town hall in the center of the city, you come to me. You choose a specific group of people you want to reach. So it might be students, you go to them, you go to a college, right? It might be a union, you go to the union hall. It could be a PTA, you go wherever they normally meet.